Swamp Thing number 0, written by Scott Snyder, art by Kano. This is just the origin story of Alec Holland as Swamp Thing. So we open up in Manitoba, Canada, 1897, which is having an extremely harsh winter. Even going into the early months of April, it's still no green anywhere, and this little girl is trudging through the snow trying to find the Green Man who brings spring wherever he goes. And after trudging through the snow, finally she came across the Swamp Thing of that time, which picks up the girl, carries her into a nearby cabin, and heals her back up using fruit from his own body. And as the girl wakes up, she's like, the cold, I came because the cold is killing everyone. And Swamp Thing's like, oh, well, I'm sorry, the cold still has a little bit to go, but don't worry, spring's around the corner. And she's like, oh, I don't want spring to come. I want you to let it go on forever. He's like, what? Why do you... Oh, crap. And then the girl reveals that it's actually Anton Arcane, who's hiding inside this girl's body. And he surprise attacks the Swamp Thing, who's also very weak because of the snow, and just immediately kills him, crushes his head in between his jaws, and he loves every second of it. He genuinely thinks that was the best kill he's ever done. So cut to Louisiana 6 years ago. We have him posing as a scientist next to Alec Holland, who is proposing a toast because they finally made some headway on a biorestorative formula that's able to restore the green into literally any situation. They have a greenhouse that's set to 125 degrees Fahrenheit, and there's still a tree growing in it perfectly fine. So it'll be a beautiful leap forward for bringing the green everywhere. And Anton recounts how absolutely many Animal Man and Swamp Things he's killed over the decades in order to establish the predominance of the rot. And sometimes the parliaments do a good job of hiding who their candidates to become these are, but sometimes they don't. And when they don't, Anton is literally able to get them from their cribs and just kill them as they are children. And he has absolutely no problem with that at all. But Alec Holland, they hid him until he became far too old to do that. And also, he's apparently supposed to be like some actual point of like major power and like legend to them. So he's definitely one that he wants to take care of. So using the scientist body, he sneaks into the Holland's home, and his wife is there, or I should say, Alec's wife is there, and she attacks him thinking that he's some sort of intruder. And she's like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. Jesus, what happened to your face? And we see his face has been all slashed up, and Anton's like, well, this skin's done for. Time to take yours. And he just straps on the wife's skin, grabs a knife, and then tries to find Alec, who is still out in the lab looking after some more notes. So we see him studying over them, and she comes in. She's like, I say she. It's Anton Arcane, but I'm going to say she. She comes in, and she's like, hey, so why you should be getting to sleep. And he's just like, I'm sorry, I can't. Like, all my life, I felt like this green has been calling to me. Like, it wants something from me, and I'm just hoping that this is it. Like, I can finally be free of its call if I just do this last thing. Like, that's all I want. And she's like, oh, don't worry. I'm sure you'll be done soon enough. Tee hee hee. Anyway, I'm going to go back to bed now. Goodbye. He's like, oh, okay. And hey, thanks, honey. And she's like, no problem. And then immediately she ducks behind some flammable liquids, turns on the valve to let it all out. And once it's properly seeped over the ground, she sets it on fire, and therefore setting the entire cabin on fire. And she looks on as Alec explodes out of the burning rubbish of the cabin, completely ablaze, and throws himself into the nearby swamp to try to put himself out. And Anton is just taunting the parliament, saying like, oh, go ahead, try to turn him into Swamp Thing, but you're too late. He's already dead. He belongs to the rot now. There's nothing you can do. And the parliament looks on, and he's like, crap, he's right. Yeah, totally got us up on that one. We were so careful, and yet here he is, already dead. Oh, that sucks. Until one tree speaks up, and he's like, actually, hold on. There might still be a chance if we're just patient. We might be able to still use Alec Holland. And they show 5 years pass, and all of a sudden Alec Holland's hand is outstretched from the swamp, and he is now able to be the greatest Swamp Thing that has ever walked the earth. So I don't know how that happened. I don't know what, like, maybe that was an Alan Moore thing pre-New 52. Maybe that was something they established and I forgot about, but I'm still not sure how they managed to have him be dead and unable to be Swamp Thing and then also be Swamp Thing. I know it had something to do with his memories being swampified. I don't know. It's something. It's a good issue, though. I really do like the layouts. Connor does a great job. Swamp Thing has always been good in terms of layouts, so no big surprise there. But no, art-wise, it looks great. Narrative-wise, tells a good story. The early Swamp Thing at the beginning of the issue was the same Swamp Thing we saw in, I believe it was Animal Man Annual. So it was a nice little callback there of a little bit of continuity between like which Swamp Thing is which and how it continues on. I genuinely do think that the Swamp Thing Animal Man pair up, both those stories are fantastic in terms of how they link together and how they're telling a bit of a larger narrative combined than they either could individually. And Swamp Thing is definitely holding up its end of things there. So overall, I'll give this issue, I'll give it an 8. I do think it is very solid. I think it is worth a read. But the whole run is. This one issue is just a good, not even entry point, but just a good installation within an already fantastic run. So definitely check it out.